2026 Community Police Review Board meeting to order. Just a quick announcement. Before proceeding, I would like to provide the board members some guidance on how to use the technology at the dais. To speak, you will need to use the mics, which are activated by pushing the talk button or push button, and you will need to wait for the chair to acknowledge the speaker before proceeding to talk. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Member Beasley Day.
Present.
Member Bryant.
Present.
Member Byrd.
Present.
Member Christensen.
Present.
Member Demrell.
Here.
Member Grant.
Here.
Member Smith. Member Hahn.
Here.
Chairman Solorio.
Here.
Are you sure Member Grant is here? It sounds like he spoke from a different country or something.
What's up? Good. All righty. Moving on, declaration of conflict of interest. Do any of the board members have any conflicts of interest pertaining to items listed on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and public comment in person. As noted on the agenda, public comment will only be in person. Zoom will still be available for viewing and wordly translation. And please note, there are no public comments for items 5 through 8, as these items are informational only in nature. Does anyone wish to speak on any item under public comment? This is for items not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to speak. Anyone wishing to address the board is asked to follow the rules of decorum. The rules of decorum are posted at the entrance of the chambers. All right, seeing no public comment, I will go ahead and close public comment. On to consent. Consent A, consider approving the minutes from the Community Police Review Board meeting on November 19th, 2025. Would anyone like to remove the consent item for any further discussion? If not, I'll be asking for a motion. Okay, I have a motion. And I have a second. Will all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And then we will be moving on to new business, the election of the chair and vice chair for the CPRB for the calendar year 2026. At this time, the meeting floor is open for board members to nominate fellow board members for the position of chair and vice chair for the 2026 calendar year. Motions will be considered for the appointment of chair and vice chair. Let us begin with the chair position.
I'd like to make a nomination for Ken Bryant for the chair position.
I second that.
Okay, so I'll call for a motion. So we had a first with Austin.
If I could just for a moment,
Oh,
if there is a board member that's like, you get nominated and you're like, I'd rather not, it's okay to say that too. We were talking about that during the week. So just wanted to put that out there so people feel free.
In that case, I'd rather not, and I would like to place a nomination in the name of board member Damrell.
I'd rather not. Maybe we just should find out who would do it.
is there anyone that would like to
Yes.
nominate themselves?
I would like somebody else to nominate.
Okay.
I nominate Latricia Beasley Day as chairperson.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So it looks like we have a motion for Latricia as chair. Do you have any comment or anything on that? I mean, okay. So we have a motion, then we have a second. And then all in favor. Second was Kenneth. Yeah. And then do you want to do a roll call on this or? Okay. So then please, can we get a roll call vote?
Member Beasley Day.
Yes.
Member Bryant.
Aye.
Member Byrd.
Aye.
Member Christensen.
Aye.
Member Demrell.
Aye.
Member Grant.
Aye.
Member Smith.
Yes.
Member Hahn.
Aye.
Current chair Solorio.
Aye. All right, motion is passed. So our new chair after the vice chair will be Latricia. Moving on to vice chair. Is there anyone that would like to nominate someone for vice chair?
Frank, are you interested in continuing on as vice chair? Are you interested in continuing on as vice chair?
Yeah, I'll do that.
I make a motion for Frank Demerel for vice chair.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion. And then we also have a second. Can we get a roll call vote on the moving on to the vice chair position?
Member Beasley Day,
Yes.
Member Bryant,
Aye.
Member Byrd,
Aye.
Member Christensen,
Aye.
Member Demrell. Member Grant,
Aye.
Member Smith,
Aye.
Member Han,
Aye.
Chairman Solorio.
Aye.
I have a question
Motion passed.
for the motion.
Yes, Austin.
For certain circumstances, police calls, going to scenes and everything like that, are we able to have, a chair, vice chair, and a possible alternate? Just in case if we have a person unable to attend or a person unable to attend a crime scene due to time conflict, is there any way that we can have an alternate? Just in case.
The bylaw has the chair as the point person for that. And then if they're not available, the vice chair fills that role.
And that's just it.
That's what, yeah.
Brian, has there ever been an instance where both chair and vice chair wasn't available?
Well, there was one.
Okay.
Yes, in August.
What did you do? You just stopped at them and that was
Yeah.
it?
Right. I didn't want to call everyone unsolicited at 3 a.m. So,
Yeah, there's
so I
that.
stopped with,
There's that part,
I called
yeah.
both of them several times, but I stopped with those.
But I also think a good question, and it's something that we can talk about later on, especially if nobody can be contacted, that's a good question to bring up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe in the future topic or something, we can bring that up. Okay, perfect.
You could always call the next person and ask them if it's okay if you call them at 3 a.m.
Call first, yeah.
Yeah.
All righty. At this time, the new chair will go ahead and lead the remainder of the agenda. So we will be switching seats. All righty.
Take your name card.
Yeah.
Okay.
Say,
Oh, good.
we'll go to presentation from staff. That's the rest of us.
All right. Well, thank you. And we'll now go on to where we are. Item B. With Ralph M. Brown Act Training and overview of the ad hoc committee. Our lovely city attorney is here.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Alex Mogg. I'm the Assistant City Attorney for Modesto, and it's good to be here this evening. It's the beginning of the year, so now's a good time to do Brown Act training. You're on my circuit of boards and commissions that I'm going to give this training. And if it's okay with the chair, feel free to interrupt with questions. We don't need to hold those until the end. Feel free to ask as we go.
Go ahead, Alex.
So the Ralph M. Brown Act is the state's open meeting law, and it's the law that guarantees that the public is able to participate in local government, in the decision-making process of the city council and all of the city's boards and commissions. So the basic requirement of the Brown Act is that meetings of legislative bodies shall be open and public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting. So we'll talk about what each one of those requirements means, but that's the general rule. So first question, what is a legislative body? So obviously a legislative body includes the governing body of any public agency. So the city council, the board of supervisors, MID's board of directors, those are all legislative bodies. It also includes any body that is appointed by the governing body. So like you all, the planning commission, the board of zoning adjustments, the equity commission, as well as standing committees. So all of the city council's standing committees are legislative bodies subject to the Brown Act, as well as any standing committees appointed by a legislative body. So if the CPRB creates a permanent standing committee, that body is subject to the Brown Act as well. What is not a legislative body is an ad hoc committee. And in order to be an ad hoc committee, it needs to be comprised of only members of the board and less than, there can be staff that is assisting or providing guidance, but there can't be like some committees we have. I was just at an audit committee for the city. There was 3 council members and 2 members of the public who are appointed to that. You can't have that kind of mix and be considered a ad hoc committee. It needs to be only members of the board and less than a quorum. So since there's 9 of you, a maximum of 4. And then an ad hoc committee has to be for a limited or single purpose that has an end date. It doesn't have to be a defined date, but it can't be something that's perpetual. So, let's take the city council, for example. They could create an ad hoc committee to deal with the fiscal year 26-27 budget, right? They come up with that proposal, that budget, is for 1 year. They come up with a proposal, take it to city council, and then it's done. It doesn't go on. In contrast, there is a finance committee that the city council has. That's sort of dealing with finance issues as they come up and just remains in process forever. So there's no, and so that is a standing committee. There's no, black and white rule on a length of time that a ad hoc committee can remain in place. It's really, what is the purpose of the ad hoc committee? So is the purpose of this committee to look at an issue and make a recommendation on a report or a policy, and that takes 2 years for them to do? As long as the purpose is finite and specific and has what we'll call an end goal or a limited purpose, it could qualify as an ad hoc. So main rule, meetings of legislative bodies need to be open and public. So we talked about what qualifies as a legislative body. The next element is what qualifies as a meeting. So a meeting is and this is straight out of the Brown Act, anytime there's a congregation of a majority of members at the same time and place to hear, discuss, deliberate, or act on an item of business within the agency's subject matter jurisdiction. So, it doesn't have to be that the board is taking action on something. It could be that they're just meeting to discuss something that qualifies as a meeting. It could be that the board is all in one place to just hear about something that's within their subject matter jurisdiction, and that would qualify even if there's no discussion going on.
Really?
But it has to be within the agency's subject matter jurisdiction. So, if you all want to get together and watch a Warriors game, that's not something within your subject matter jurisdiction. If you're all getting together to talk about, MID's electric rates, that's not something within your subject matter jurisdiction, so it doesn't apply. So while that's the general rule, there are a lot of exceptions to the rule. So, you can go to other meetings of legislative bodies that are noticed. So you could all go to a city council meeting, for example, even if the city council is talking about something within your subject matter jurisdiction. You can have one-on-one contacts with each other or with the staff, and that doesn't qualify. You can go to a ceremonial event or, something like that, and it doesn't qualify. Or conferences. And you can also go to community meetings, and that doesn't qualify. But in order to qualify as a community meeting, the event needs to have a couple components. One, it needs to be open to the public and publicized. So if a organization is having a private event, invitation only event, that doesn't qualify. It needs to be a meeting that's open to everyone. It needs to be hosted by a third party. It can't be something that the city puts on. So that means not just the CPRB, but any department of the city. So if the police department's putting on an event or city council or anything like that, that wouldn't qualify. So I don't know. Some of you may have gone in the past to the mayor's state of the city speech. That doesn't qualify as a community event because it's put on by the city. So we issue actually and post a meeting agenda for that for the city council, because the majority of the city council is normally there. A majority can attend a community event together, even if it's about something within your jurisdiction. If it qualifies, meets those first two requirements, but you can't discuss among yourself. And that's the same with all of these exceptions, right? You're all watching the Warriors game together. You can't in the corner also talk about the business of the CPRB. So I mentioned that individual contacts are fine, right? It's okay for one of you to speak with one of your colleagues, and that is not a Brown Act violation. But serial meetings can become a Brown Act meeting. And a serial meeting occurs when enough of those individual contacts add up to a majority of the board interacting with each other. Not directly, but through this series of conversations or events. One thing to point out is that's only a series of conversations between you individually, right? Each one of you can talk to Scotty, and that's okay. As long as Scotty is not relaying what he discusses with you. So
that means I couldn't talk to each and every one of them individually on my own time about a specific topic.
correct. So you would only be able to talk to 3 others of them because
quorum number.
yeah, quorum number. So you could talk to 3 of them. Although they have to consider who they're talking to, and if suddenly now those numbers are adding up. But so there's 2 common types of serial meetings. One is what we call a hub and spoke, where there's someone who's the hub who is relaying it back. So let's say the chair had individual conversations with 4 people, and is telling each person what they've said. Has a chair has a conversation with member A, then has a separate conversation with member B, and during that conversation with member B tells member B what member A says, and then has a separate conversation with member C and tells member C what member A said. And so even though member A isn't talking to all these other people, only talking to the chair is sort of the hub in the wheel that's creating a majority that's talking. And that could be a staff person as well. So even though staff might have individual conversations with you, they're not passing along what they hear from other board members. And then the other example is a daisy chain. And this is basically a game of telephone, where member A talks to member B then talks to member C and says, this is what member A said. Member C then talks to member D and says, this is what I heard member A is thinking, and so on until the majority of people have discussed an item indirectly. Yeah.
Going back to the ad hoc, you said we can get 4, but I believe the way we're constructed, 1 is the chairman, right? So it's really 3 in the chairman. Okay, just
yeah. And so an ad hoc is a good example of a serial meeting, right? You're having not a serial meeting, but what could become a serial meeting, right? Four of you are discussing a topic together. That means if any one of you discusses that topic with someone else, you've now hit 5. Right? If you talk about what the ad hoc committee was doing and then discuss that with a 5th member, now 5 members are aware of what the ad hoc committee all discussed, even though that ad hoc committee wasn't agendized and isn't subject to the Brown Act. That's why ad hoc committee reports are on the agenda, so that during the meeting in a notice fashion, you can give an update on everything that's going on and hear feedback or answer questions from your fellow board members.
Yeah. Point of clarification for us specifically based on what Frank just said. So if we are 3 plus the chairperson, and if the chairperson is not available or interested in sitting in that one, can we add a 4th then? Or are we designed with 3 plus the chair, or just those 3 without the chair?
So the committee could change, and John, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
The bylaws state that the chair is a de facto member of the ad hoc.
It is.
Yes,
It makes the
can be the 4th.
Emails are another example of a serial meeting, right? Like it doesn't have to be in-person conversation or verbal. It can be by phone. I mean, or email, replying all to an email. That's why staff is often, might BCC you on emails just so you don't accidentally respond and have that type of serial meeting.
So do you have to have 3 in order to even have the ad hoc meeting, or if you don't meet quorum, you can't have your meeting?
So, and I don't know if the bylaws say something, but the Brown Act doesn't require, since it's not a Brown Act committee, the quorum doesn't apply. So if the bylaws don't specify, like you could have that meeting with less than the full attendance of an ad hoc committee. But the Brown Act, since it's not considered a legislative body subject to the Brown Act doesn't prevent it from happening the way it would for a regular meeting of this board. Social media is also a common way you can have a serial meeting, and the legislature has actually created a pretty specific rule that basically says, you guys can of course go on social media and post about what you're doing, and it's possible you post something and all 8 of your fellow committee members see that and know what you think. That's okay under the Brown Act. But what the Brown Act says is it's a strict rule that you cannot interact with anything your fellow board members do on social media that's related to this subject matter jurisdiction. So again, they post, I had a great time, went and saw a great movie yesterday. It's fine. You can like it, you can comment it. But if it's something about, this board or a board's jurisdiction, you can't engage with it at all. You can't comment on it. You can't repost it, or things like that. If a member of the community posts something, you guys also can't have a conversation or interact with each other, in the comments, replying to that person's post. You can reply to that post, but if you see another when one of your colleagues has also respond to that post, you shouldn't be responding to their comment, just the member of the public's comment.
A question. So let's say it's an article in the Modesto Bee about 0 homicides in 2025, and someone posts that and says, "Great job, MPD," and then other people come in. I mean, can I comment on?
So if a member of the public posts that, then you can comment on it. But if one of you post it, you can't comment on that post. You can't like it. You can't repost it or do any of those things under the Brown Act.
Okay, I do have a question as far as that. So, okay, so like, what about meeting dates? Like, we couldn't all post about a meeting date for people to come to our meeting?
you could you could post about a meeting date, your colleagues could post about a meeting date. And like a meeting date is that really, you know, a conversation, but like let's say, and there are some exceptions in the Brown Act for like scheduling meetings, so that might fall under that. But let's say that article, like each one of you could post that article individually, and there's no problem with that. You just can't engage with each other through social media. So you could say, you know, public, come to our meeting next Tuesday, next Wednesday, you know, at 5:30 p.m. That's fine for each one of you to do. You just can't engage with each other's in posts.
Okay, one more clarifying question. So the Modesto Bee example, Modesto Bee post is there. Frank posts a comment. I just can't reply to Frank's comment, but I can comment on the Modesto Bee article.
Correct.
I just can't engage with
if
Frank.
if Frank reposts it, you shouldn't be commenting on
Right.
Frank's post. On the Modesto Bee post,
If
if
he
Frank,
comments.
director, you can both comment on it as long as you're not commenting
With each other.
with each other.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to get that clarified. Thank you.
For an article that was displayed in the Modesto Bee to be forwarded to all of the members of our board. And I think I sent it to Simi. So is that, can she send that out? to
Yeah,
other-
so she could send that out to other people. What she couldn't do is if you sent it to her and you said, I think, can you share this with everyone? I think this article is really good because of A, B, C, D, and E reason. And now she forwards your comments too, because now you're sharing your comments on the substance. But if you just say, here's an article, it's not something that's produced by you, so it doesn't reflect your, you know, your thoughts or feelings. It's just a third party. Something staff could send that out without your comments. If you said, I wrote this summary of issues I think are concerns in Modesto, staff, can you send that out? That's something she wouldn't be able to do outside of a agenda packet. Did that answer that?
So the article can be forwarded?
Yeah,
And
the article itself could be forwarded. Your commentary on the article, if any, couldn't be forwarded, but the actual article written by from a third party could be. So Brown Act requires that meetings of legislative bodies be open to the public. And that means that one of those requirements is that the public needs to know what's going to be discussed. They need to know whether they want to come to the meeting or not based on what's on the agenda. So there needs to be an agenda posted for each meeting. If it's a regular meeting, it needs to be posted 72 hours ahead of time. For special meetings, the law allows it to be posted as little as 24 hours ahead of time, but the city's practice is to always try to do that 72 hours, absent unusual circumstances. And that way the public knows what's going to be discussed at this meeting, whether they want to attend or not. There are some exceptions where you can, well, let me take a step back. At the meeting, you can only discuss, deliberate, act on, those items that are on the agenda itself. There are some exceptions for emergencies or urgent situations. Those generally won't apply to the board. They really only can happen to the city council, who has decision-making authority. You very rarely, like we had some of these situations during COVID, or when there's been really big storms or emergency repairs that need to be made, and like had to get authorized, like the agenda is published on a Thursday and something breaks over the weekend, and the council needs to authorize the repair immediately. Like those types of situations. But otherwise, you can only act on what's on the agenda. Every meeting has to allow for public participation. That's the cornerstone of the Brown Act. And it comes in two forms. The public has the right to comment once generally on anything within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, just a regular general public comment. And then also on individual items that the board is going to be discussing or deliberating on. For general public comment, if it's not on the agenda, the public has the right to speak on anything they want, but the board does not. So if it's an item that's not on the agenda, you can receive those comments that the public made. If you want a brief response to that is allowed. It's not a definition of what a brief response is, but it should not be a long conversation. And it also, one board member speaking for 1 minute in response is probably brief. You get to a point where if each board member is, making a brief response, suddenly it's not so brief anymore. And of course, if there's something that a member of the public brings up in their public comments that is not on the agenda, but it's important, the board thinks it's important to discuss, that's something that could be put on a future agenda for the board to discuss, because it's important that, there may be other members of the public out there who think that topic is important as well, and they had no reason to come to that meeting because it wasn't on the agenda to discuss. So I'm going to talk briefly about remote participation in meetings. I would say that this is an option, but in general, it's always better. The city's standard and sort of practices that whenever possible, people should be attending in person. So there are traditional teleconference rules. These are the rules that I'd say existed before COVID. You have to, you can participate remotely, but your address from where you're participating needs to be on the agenda. You need to post that agenda at the location that you're participating from, and that location needs to be made open and accessible to the public. So if you're at home, you got to put your home address on the agenda, you got to post it, and you got to let people come in who want to participate in the meeting from your living room. Generally that's not something you see people do. Before COVID, the only time you really saw this being used is if people were maybe on vacation and they weren't worried that someone, was going to show up at their hotel in Hawaii. So they would do that. Yeah.
That was pretty, especially since it was 2 o'clock in the morning when the council meeting was. There was probably not very many people following me around. So I was safe.
And there is a requirement still that, majority of the board would, or, for a city council meeting, a majority of the council needs to be in person in the location. During COVID, the legislature started to think, well, maybe we don't want people who are sick to feel they have to go to the meeting or post their home address, or we don't want people, if someone's home because they're sick, we don't want members of the public showing up for that. So they created an alternative process for AB 2449, which allows remote participation. You don't need to post your address. It doesn't need to be included in the agenda. But you can only do it for what we're called just cause, and you can only use it twice a year. And you have to use audio and visual technology. So you have to have a camera on and be in voice. You can't just call in. With the traditional way, you could just call in and just have your voice there. Just cause, there's 6 categories in the law. You have a family caregiving need, you have an illness, you are a family member is immunocompromised, there's a disability, you're traveling on official business for the city or another public agency. You know, if you happen to work for the county and you're traveling for the county, even though this isn't a county board that qualifies, or military service. So, and you can only use these twice a year. And then for AB 2449, separate from this, you know, you could get a accommodation to participate remotely under the ADA, but for these, if you're using AB 2449, there's a 2-meeting limit. But again, in-person attendance is really strongly encouraged. That's, you know, always been the position of the city. Yeah.
I do have a question on this. For the AB 2449, is there like a time frame that needs to be given prior to the meeting starting? If
Yeah, so
all-
you, for traditional, you need to let staff know pretty far in advance so they can include it on the agenda. And for teleconference, there's no specific time. I mean, it's helpful to let staff know as soon as possible. These meetings are on Zoom already. So there's no strict requirement. You have to announce at the beginning of the meeting that you're participating by pursuant to this law, and you have to state the general basis for it. So you don't have to go into, you know, private medical details, but you just have to say, you know, I'm at home because I'm taking care of a family member or something like that. And you have to say whether there's anyone over 18 with you in the room. But there's no, you have to do that at the beginning of the meeting. But there's no strict deadline for when you have to tell staff, but I would say as soon as you know, or they, you know, it may not be possible, you know, if you're telling them last minute, because, you know, we're not regularly, we don't accept public comment by Zoom. So, you know, is the sound set up for you to be projected here? Like there may not be time to test all that stuff out.
Okay. Thank you.
So violations of the Brown Act, you know, it's possible for criminal prosecution for knowingly violating the Brown Act. I mean, that has happened. It happens for egregious violations, right? Where, you know, usually maybe closed sessions that shouldn't be closed sessions, or really, you know, serious violations, not because you accidentally send an email to the whole commission or anything, the board or anything like that. There are procedures of, you know, for someone to sue if they think this, you know, a board or commission is violating the Brown Act, or to invalidate an action. You know, they can make you redo a whole meeting, you know, in compliance with the Brown Act. But the number one thing is really just a loss of public trust, that the public doesn't think, you know, you're operating in a good way, or that, you know, the city council decides this board isn't operating in compliance with the Brown Act or its bylaws, like, you know, let's replace all the members or things like that. So that's, you know, while it's possible to have these more serious violations, that, you know, realistically, the most serious and most important is the possibility of the board losing its sort of trust from the council or the public. Because, you know, don't want to be in a Modesto Bee article where that's what the headline's about. So with that, I'll pause if there are any other questions from the board.
You mentioned about public comment at our meetings, and it's my understanding that we're not to engage with a member of the public that's stating, you know, whatever their issue is. I think we were told that we could ask a question for clarification, or we could refer whatever the issue is that they're bringing up to a staff member for action.
Yeah.
But we can't engage in a back and forth with them, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Correct. So you can have a brief, you know, the board as a whole can have a brief comment, So if that shouldn't be, a whole back and forth. It definitely should not be back and forth, and it shouldn't be in a long statement about your positions. But, if someone's saying, complaining about X, Y, and Z, you could say, hey, I refer you to staff, go follow up with the police chief or who's ever, or the deputy city manager or whatever. Or you could say, we've actually adopted a policy on that. It's on our website. You should go take a look. Something short like that is fine, but you wouldn't want to sit there and say, and our policy that we adopted was, and describe it for 10 minutes and have a back and forth.
Well, for example, if a member of the public says, and this has come up, we think you should do this and you should require the police department to do this or that. And is it permissible for us to refer them to our bylaws, which basically says that we're an advisory committee, that we have no enforcement authority? Is that permissible?
Yeah, I think it would be, a short statement from one of you or staff just saying, our bylaws say this is what we're able to do, would be fine. Short and sweet. What would be a problem is if you then started, but we disagree with our bylaws and we think you're right and we should, I agree with you and we should go to the city council and do X, Y, and Z.
Thank you.
Just for point of clarification, can you define just in general why it is that a group like ours is not extended closed session privileges compared to like a council or
Yeah, so great question. So Brown Act requires meetings to be in public but closed sessions are allowed for very specific reasons. So the council anybody can meet in closed session to have a performance evaluation of an employee that reports to them. No employees report to the board. Bodies can meet in closed session to discuss labor negotiations or litigation that they're a party to, but none of those apply to this body. They're all only apply to the city council because the city council is the decision maker. So let's say there's litigation involving officer involved shooting, right? Like the council is the decision maker regarding those types of litigation. So they can have the closed session, but this body can't. And so there's none of the very limited exceptions for why you can have a closed session would apply to this body, or frankly, to any of the city's other, boards and commission, the planning commission. There's no reason they would ever be able to be in closed session. It's really just the city council.
Transparency, and I lived under the Brown Act for 8 years on the city council, and it's at times very difficult to get business transacted because I can't just talk to people, according to the law, I never could see why we have an advisory committee that's subject to the Brown Act. It doesn't make sense to me. I understand the transparency part, but we could still be transparent and do the meetings without this kind of onerous limitation on what we can talk about. And is that a policy of the city or?
No, that is the part of the Brown Act. It's not a policy of the city. The Brown Act itself, the legislature, the law they passed says that the Brown Act applies to any body that is appointed by the city council. And so it applies to you.
No authority to do nothing.
Even if it's advisory. It also says it applies to, body, if the council has the ability to appoint someone to out a third party board and commission, the city has the right to appoint members to the Chamber of Commerce. We give them money like that subject to the Brown Act.
So the only way then that this could be a non-Brown Act is if some other method of selection of the people here
Correct.
was
So,
done.
if, for example, city manager said, I want to get or the chief of police said, I want a body to help advise me or give me some recommendations, and I'm going to select them, and they're going to, respond to me, that wouldn't be subject to the Brown Act. But anytime the council is making the appointments, it's subject to the Brown Act. Sorry.
I think what's a little confusing is that our recommendations and our annual reports go to the city manager and they don't go to the city council, but city council appoints us. So it's kind of like.
So I'll say,
confusion there.
the law is very clear, but I don't disagree with your point about is it a productive policy that the legislature has incorporated, right? Could they just, rather than say it applies to any body who is appointed by the city council, would it be better if the legislature changed the rules to just say it applies to any body that has decision-making authority that's appointed by the city council or something? But that's not what the Brown Act says. So I hear your frustration. It is frustration. You hear on many boards and committees of, golf course advisory committee, they have to comply with this too. And it's the same thing. Like they're also just making recommendations.
So somebody else other than the council, if they say this is the good thing to do, even say the police chief, would that make it?
Yeah. So if the city manager, independently said, I want to create a committee and appoint members to it, and I'll control, it will just be reporting to me. The members won't be appointed by the city council. The city council won't establish bylaws. I'll decide what the committee can and can't do. Then that wouldn't be subject to the Brown Act.
Okay.
Could I ask a question of you, Scotty? So this board was modeled on the Anaheim model. And Anaheim was appointed by the city council, the city manager, right?
I think that's correct, that they're not subject to the Brown Act.
Yeah, I
And
know
they're not subject.
they are not subject to the Brown Act.
And they're not subject. Was that conscious? Do you know if that was?
So I'll say, it was considered. I think it was something that was discussed in evaluating things, and at the time, as for Together was making recommendations. I think also the council, my understanding from the council is they wanted these discussions to be public, that they thought it was important for the board's activities to be public. They, not to say that can't change their mind in the future, but at the time, I think that was important. The council thought that was an important thing.
Yeah, and they were given that choice, because I've never, not just this body, but everything in the city of Modesto is, and I see it in other places where they're not.
Well, so, and
Not this
maybe this will help clarify, right? The council also can't, the city manager can go independently decide he wants to appoint a group to help advise him. It's not really the city manager independently appointing a group. If the city council directs the city manager, you go appoint this group. And so that's part of the issue too, is I think, at the time the council thought, it was important that this board's process be public. Doesn't mean, as part of your annual report, you can't say, it's been 3 years and we think it would be more productive to eliminate this, and hopefully the city manager will decide to move forward.
I see our mission as being kind of unique because we're supposed to be the Community Police Review Board, but this process really stifles us from having a lot of dialogue or anything, and we're pretty much just listening. And then, I don't know, I think that, first of all, is it possible to request that we not be placed under the Brown Act based on the nature of what?
It's not possible that, this body will always be under the Brown Act, unless the legislature changes the law. If the city council wants to eliminate this body and, the chief of police decides to create something that would be different, but this board will always be subject to the Brown Act. And I hear you on the, it's hard to have a back and forth conversation. If there is a topic, you want to discuss and have more of a back and forth, it's hard to do that and just come to us and talk about anything you want, because then we can't really agendize that. But if you say, like, we really want to talk about the department's use of force policy and have a back and forth with members, if it's a more limited topic, we could work with staff on how can we agendize this so the public can come and they're talking on this topic, and we'll be more flexible with the time limits. We maybe won't have a strict 3 minutes. We'll allow people to talk for longer, and then we can all make comments and have more of that. But that's hard to do for just come talk to us about anything related to police and have that back and forth, because then the public doesn't know what's going to be talked about or where this is going to go.
What about town halls? If is it okay for our whole board to attend a town hall if it's related to a subject?
A town hall, I guess, put on by who would, or a town hall that the city is sponsoring?
No, it doesn't have to be one that the city's sponsoring.
so-
And are we as a board, could we possibly sponsor a town hall?
The board could sponsor a town hall. We would have to decide how to structure that in order to make sure people could discuss, right? You can't take, even if it's a town hall, there's still no action that can happen. You could possibly agendize it so that people can come and ask questions and get responses or share their opinions, but not, there's still no action that can be taken or direction given to staff, because hasn't been agendized that way. But just to have a more open back and forth, that's possible. It just have to be agendized in that way, and not in the way a normal meeting is agendized, where there's a defined public comment as a time for the public to bring up something, but without the ability of anyone to respond.
And do we always have to, the location of where our meetings are, does it always have to be here, or could we have a meeting out in the community?
So under the Brown Act, you could have a meeting out in the community, someplace that's accessible. We have to work with staff to see, is that particular location feasible or not? There's technology that goes into all of this that maybe isn't as mobile, but it is possible to have meetings outside of this location.
Any members of the public have any comments, questions to ask?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to close the public comments. The board has no further actions. Now are going to go to C. Let's discuss the CPRB priorities for 2026. Our very own Scotty Douglas.
Thank you, members of the board, Chair, Person Beasley Day. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the board priorities for 2026. So just as a reminder, in the past couple of years, we've revisited topics, but kind of in planning for this year's meeting and really, around some of the conversations regarding ad hoc committees and things like that. The suggestion, kind of working with the prior chair and stuff regarding setting priorities for the board, and then topics can kind of fall within, what the board's wanting to accomplish in 2026. I do want to just acknowledge that sometimes things ebb and flow. Maybe there's a new topic that comes up, something happens, and kind of put these things to the side. But this is just kind of, some discussion for planning purposes for 2026. If you'd like to accomplish something, the ad hoc committees that we have right now, they've been in place for a while, and it's an opportunity, to start kind of planning into the future. Is there another ad hoc that we may need to form? There's also kind of the consideration, on the other side of that about time that needs to be spent on certain topics, who needs to be included, that sort of thing. Just as a reminder, this is not an opportunity to mention a topic and then do a deep dive on a topic. It's really just kind of to talk amongst yourselves about the priorities. And if there's a particular topic that you want to mention too, we can note that down. But kind of what you're really aiming for as priorities to accomplish as a board in 2026. So I turn that back over to you, Madam Chair, so that you kind of discuss among yourselves. And we're here to take notes. The next part of the process will be, sorry, I was going to turn it over to you, but just a moment. As the next part of the process will be that we will receive your feedback tonight. We will compile, what you all would like to contribute for your priorities for this year. And then we will bring that back in February, kind of as more of a final draft product so that you all can take a vote on that. And then we will move forward in 2026. Also just in, meeting with the prior chair, it's like, the annual report and things like that. I think it'll be helpful to have some of like, what are the board's priorities and then the things that you have all accomplished throughout the year. So now I turn it over to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any board members have any comments on that or ideas?
Yes. Are we able to make recommendations for ad hoc committees right now? Like just for ideas, right?
Yeah, this is to set the priorities, like what do you want to accomplish as a board this year? And then when we bring it back next month, you all will vote on it. And then at that time, it might be appropriate to, make those recommendations. Thank you.
Anybody have priority number 1, 2, 3?
I think February's creation of ad hoc committees, I think that's great to have it in February. We should try to close out the current ad hocs that we have and come back with what we requested of Modesto Police Department is SMART goals with our new created ad hocs, being more specific. So, for example, reducing youth arrest, that's very broad, but if we want to get specific with it, we can talk about the Wake Up program. We can do a deep dive in that and create an ad hoc around the Wake Up program, meet with Lieutenant Kleiber and see how we can work together to, lift that program to make it more available for more kids in the community. So that's just kind of an example of what we can do. So I think February is great for that, but I'm also thinking maybe to bring a topic of the bylaws and I heard, a few people not too fond of our current structure and possibly bringing up the topic of our bylaws and making a recommendation for a change of structure and how we work as a board and maybe trying to go away from that Brown Act. And so that's just another topic that I think is a priority of mine.
Okay, thanks for that. I would just like for the board to kind of think about, since we are not necessarily putting out like certain creation of ad hoc like committees today, but I would like to throw out some ideas. Therefore, if an idea was presented in February, people had time to at least have 30 days to think about it. And so I would like for us to create three ad hocs possibly. And one of those being a quarterly ad hoc report committee. Therefore, that we can create an ad hoc that actually does and helps out with reporting for our annual report throughout the year. So then it's just an easier creation for us. Secondly, I would hope that we would actually create an ad hoc committee that actually focuses on the communication between the police department, citizens, and also the city of Modesto. So that would consist of an ad hoc reaching out to specific nonprofits that have come to our meetings to discuss certain topics, complaints, and et cetera. And then also communicating with police department about certain things that they would want us to accomplish and look at as well, and as well as the city of Modesto. I truly believe that those two ad hocs would be very beneficial. And then also a third ad hoc that is structured around focusing on, like we focused on youth arrest, but more so of like youth leadership. One of the things that one of our citizens has constantly told us week in and week out is that, can we have a volunteer student be a part of our board? The police department currently already has an Explorers program. The Community Police Review Board doesn't necessarily have that function. And then, and also partnering with schools to do certain things as far as career days. So more events that way. And so I have more, but those are just the three ad hocs I was also thinking. And then also, because I've been hearing about Brown Act, and that was one of the presentations today, I would hope that the city could kind of do more so of live simulation training on the Brown Act. Therefore, like putting us in position to where we would have to enforce the Brown Act and use it, so then we understand ways and not necessarily how to work around it, but we work with it. And so just my considerations.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
We've had discussions or comments about this item numerous times in the last couple of years, but I think a priority of this board should be to have a more visible presence in the community. And by that, I mean having like one of those pop-up canopies with some signage that identifies who we are, so that we can attend community events and the public can see us. And obviously we'd have to comply with the Brown Act. We couldn't have a majority of the board there, but I think we could rotate that on a regular basis so that we were present in a number of different community settings, so that the community becomes more aware of us and feels more engaged with us and able to offer ideas and comments, complaints, all of those things that I think would help us in our mission in overseeing the activities of the police department. I think, having that presence in the community, that visible presence, is important. I think should be a priority of ours to get that accomplished this year.
If I might, I think outreach and ways to do it should be a priority for the next year. And some of the ways Ken talked about, and the other ways that we had our committee that talked about that as well. And so I think that's really important in view of kind of what we're supposed to be doing. And sort of combining what Nico and Austin said, I think a student representative on the board would be good, but I think that would take either an amendment of the bylaws or asking the city council for perhaps a volunteer to step down so that a student member could be appointed. I don't know, but that would have to be addressed either through the bylaws or some change now, right, John?
It might be difficult because the city charter has certain requirements for board members, and one of them is that they be essentially voting age. So they have to be an adult to be a member of a board.
But they're a volunteer, not a member.
It's
Is that the same concept?
Same thing. Yeah.
I don't know, because I felt like when I was in high school, I was a volunteer for boards when I was in high school. I don't know. That's why I felt like I could do it, because I did it when I was in high school.
It depends on what you mean by volunteer, and what the intended role is, but they wouldn't be able to, as our laws sit right now, they wouldn't be able to have a vote on the board or a seat on the board.
Like a vote? I don't think.
Am I talking now? Some of the boards that have youth on them, they're not governing boards, and that's where we're pulled up under like the Brown Act and everything, because we're appointed by a governing board, so that applies to us. I think there's some risk having minors engaged in, like when we get our debriefs after an incident, I think there's some concerns around that, but I think a way to plug youth in, if they're minors, would be on some of our ad hocs, advising and adding commentary from the community might be a way that we can bridge between. But under 18 non-voting to come on to here, I see the challenge there.
I understand exactly what you're saying, but however, like, when you have a volunteer, I'm pretty sure we can create the criteria for them. Like, we don't necessarily have to have them attend an incident that is happening at 3 a.m. They don't necessarily have to.
Our debriefs, our briefings on those.
Yes, ma'am. I don't think they would have to necessarily attend those either. I just think just attending these and just understanding the Brown Act and how some of the things that we go through as far as these presentations, I feel like is very valuable. And then also when you're talking about voting, I don't think a student would need to vote on anything that we do, and especially when we kind of don't necessarily make decisions too. We're mostly in an advisory committee. And so I don't even think that we would even make true decisions if we needed to make a vote. We would just kind of just need a student to just understand our process and our process.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Okay.
yeah, we're kind of getting off into a deeper discussion on non-agendized item.
Okay.
Thank you.
To that point, though, I mean, it is something that we're noting down, that there is an interest in this particular topic that we can mark down for, possible consideration, as part of the priorities. And then if you decide to agendize it at some point to discuss it further, then we can certainly assist with that.
And I don't think the assumption that you have to be a minor to be a student doesn't make sense, because I was going to college when I shouldn't tell you because it took me a long time to get through, but no.
Yeah, I interesting discussion happening, but like I said, we'll continue to take these down. I'm seeing some interest, in certain areas. And so that's what we're here to discuss, is the priorities. What would you like to focus on? And then also kind of like just considering your resources as a board to put towards these as well.
Right.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question for you, Scotty. The items that I talked about, having a visible presence and having a pop-up canopy and signage and that sort of thing. Obviously, there's an expense involved in that. So does that have to be considered by the city council in their budgeting process? And if so, can we request that they consider that in the upcoming budget cycle?
So as a topic, or a priority for the board, I actually made a note here regarding having a physical presence in the community and interacting with the community. I know that Member Byrd has brought this up before. There's an ad hoc that has been kind of discussing some of these things in the past. Simi and I have been working kind of behind the scenes, just so Wendy, so that you're aware. I'm trying not to get too deep into discussing a topic, but just to let you know that we've got your list. Simi and I are working on putting something together so that we can bring this back. We're looking at the potential for the budget. I don't think it's a lot of funding, so this is a request. It's already been made of us, and I'm working with our budget manager to take a look at that. There's also travel budget that has been, assigned for like attending the conference, the NACO conference. And so I think there's some opportunities there. So I just kind of wanted to float that out there. That's already something staff is working on, but we appreciate you bringing that up. And as a board priority, the physical presence in the community and interacting with the community in 2026.
I think that's good because I think our main priority should be strengthening relationships between community and law enforcement.
Yep, that's in your
And everything
bylaws.
here seems so one-sided.
Yep.
Even in terms of presentations, who's allowed to give a presentation at one of these meetings? It seems to me like it's mainly like city staff or, the police department or whatever. So will it ever be possible for other members of the community that want to give a presentation to us
Well,
to be placed on an agenda?
I'm sorry to kind of put it this way. I mean, if it's a particular priority in 2026 to determine that, but that is a question to staff and we can actually take that back. That's a great question. We can take that back and then we can provide a response. So, kind of staying on the priorities topic, but we appreciate the question. So Ms. Bird or Board Member Bird, we can certainly follow up on that.
It's talking about with volunteers.
You're on.
I know. Topic for asking. Is it a possibility that we created like an ad hoc for volunteers? Is that even a possibility, or is that like breach Brown Act violations?
Is that a priority question?
It's a part of outreach.
The ad hocs have to be composed of actual board members. They can't be
No, like
outside people.
I
You can't,
understand.
and you can't include, let's say you have 3 board members, you can't say, you can't have another person from the member be a member of the ad hoc.
I was mostly thinking of like we had 3 ad hoc members, and let's just say part of our outreach component, we're attending an event and none of us can make it. And would we be able to go to our volunteer ad hoc committee and say, hey, one of you guys, can you guys see if you have any volunteers in the community that would be able to attend this event for us?
That's a, I can get back to you on that. That requires
Because a volunteer
more
doesn't necessarily
in-depth discussion.
Yeah, because a volunteer doesn't necessarily have to be a citizen. It could be a police officer too.
Yeah. So I'll take that down and get back to you on that.
All right, any other priorities?
Yeah, if I may just add, if we can try to lock in some of these topics for at least a quarter or a few months so that we can be sure the city staff has appropriate time to get things, organized.
Are you referring to the future topics that are?
I mean, we can go
down here,
over
or
future
are you
topics
talking
at the
about what's already
bottom.
listed?
We can, currently we're in January, so that's gonna be crossed off, but we need to lock in February, March, April, and possibly May. So we have those future topics at the bottom, and I also wanted to just add in, there was a policy goal to protect community members' civil rights during interactions with the police. If there's a way, I don't know if we can include not just local police, interactions with local police, but like federal, how do we protect our community members if they do interact with any federal police officers? So, one of them was sponsor Know Your Rights training, and I know we brought this up last year and it didn't follow through, but if that can be a priority, I don't know how you guys all feel for this year, but it is sponsor Community Know Your Rights training, and I don't know how that will look, but if it's having to hire an outside organization to give a presentation on knowing your rights, I think that would also be a priority of mine for this upcoming year.
Know your rights training.
So, yeah, so just, the topics, right? There's topics and then there's the priorities of the board. So the priorities of the board, so these are some of the topics that would fit within some of those priorities. And I think that, staff, we're more than happy to take the input. If you all are in consensus as a board, you're not voting on anything tonight, but you can have consensus. We can observe that, and then we can bring back the proposed at this next month's meeting for, stating the priorities, and then noting the topics, and then putting them in that particular order, like
Okay.
what you're talking about
Okay.
right now.
Okay, sorry, I misspoke.
These are just my suggestions, trying to guide the conversation a little bit.
That's how I caught it too. We're kind of putting it all out there. They're going to give us the list back and then we kind of form it into our hit list. Task list, I should say.
I just looked at the future of next month and one thing on there, I was kind of like, maybe we might need another topic on there.
Maybe it depends on, we're looking at this, what we're talking about right now, right? And I know that there's a lot of discussion on this, it's just me, kind of Scotty chiming in as I'm kind of observing, is, this takes some time. And, the city council has two, strategic planning sessions every year to kind of set the next 2-year priorities. And so, it takes time to do that. And so in February, we're going to solidify this. There might be additional discussion on this particular topic. And then the potential for ad hoc committees, and obviously the annual report was one that was brought up as well for ad hoc. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there. We're happy to, kind of make, adjustments where we can and need to, but I certainly am appreciating the conversation I'm seeing. And I don't know if Stephen's on as well. If you guys want to, call on Stephen for any of his thoughts, feel free to do that. Sorry, Stephen, I'm kind of offering you up here.
Hi, Stephen.
Scotty, you just said something that's kind of interesting. You mentioned that the city council has a strategic planning meetings. Is that Brown Act?
Yes, and so, well, I'm going to defer to our attorney to kind of explain that part of it. I could explain.
It feels like we need a strategic planning meeting.
Well, that's kind of what, that's what tonight.
What this is
happening, yeah. And so it's discussion. But it's setting your priorities. I wouldn't say that it's a full strategic plan, and we don't have any other boards, commissions, or committees that set a strategic plan. The city council does. And so, if there's anybody that wanted to chime in on that.
I guess sort of clarification of how I'm seeing this, and this is more to Nico. I think what next month is, it's not simply ad hoc committee formation, but it's also what are our priorities. And that will help us then expand out the topics for the future. So I think those are going to get meaty enough because there's so much that we just came up with.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page now. Thank you.
I have a topic. Recommendation for November 18, 2026 and December 16, 2026, that we have, we would have to, but I would just say if it was recommendation, it would just possibly be better if we actually did our priorities in November and actually did this calendar in December. So then it's not going into the new year. But I understand that the possibility of having an election of a chair and vice chair, does that prohibit us from having the priorities and the topics in November, or revisiting the ad hoc committees if we want to restructure them in December?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think that there's anything prohibiting that. Working with the chair, obviously we work closely with the chair, vice chair to kind of guide us through the year. But setting the priorities, the board members are the board members. And so sometimes, but I will say that, there will be some changeover of the board members at some point. And so maybe, that's kind of something to consider as well. Honestly, there's no rule that says you can't set priorities in November, December to start off the next year.
Right.
This was kind of our first round, and I think, we took January as kind of like, we're going to conduct business in the January meeting, and I think that's kind of how it landed here.
Yeah, because when you just look at kind of like how our board has operated in the past, sometimes just kind of like where we're kind of moving today, it would seem like we would have everything done, particularly in March, and then in 9 months, we're changing things over. And so I just thought it would just be better if we had in November, December, we get a full 12 months. So just kind of just consideration for the board to look at as far as the topics and priorities.
Okay, thank you, board member.
One of the topics I would be interested in is to take a deeper dive into the RIPA data that we received and to take a closer look into why there's such a disproportionate amount of stops or use of force specifically with African Americans.
So I'm hearing a topic. Is there a board priority that maybe we could title that here so that we can consider, because I know that this is a particular topic that might go in within that, but is there a board priority that we could note down?
I think it fits into the priority of improving community relations.
Okay. So we can note the, improving community relations topic. It kind of, there's a couple of ones that are related here. It's the physical presence in the community and interactions with the community. And these are great priorities and topics we're talking about, because next month we're going to be talking about the potential of ad hoc creations and stuff as well. So, with the RIPA data, that sort of thing might be a component of that. I do know that we had, and I think we've mentioned this before, that, there was a presentation on that by staff in the past. I know that, and we're actually able to go kind of take a look at the archives if anybody's interested to know where that is and the information was presented and the potential of an ad hoc, if there's one created. I'm not suggesting anything here, but if there is, that, that sort of information could be helpful as well.
I would have to agree with you on that, Scotty. I think since we've already gotten a presentation on RIPA data, Wendy, if there's specific things in that presentation that you want to talk about, create an ad hoc. We can create an ad hoc for that. We can meet on that, and then we can bring it to the full board so that we don't get the same presentation that we received already.
Well, I think that one thing that we've gotten is just the data, but we don't have the context, a lot of context.
And in an ad hoc, we can invite Lieutenant Kleiber into that meeting and ask him specific questions of the data, and then from there can be further. There can be that brought back to the full board of what you guys spoke about RIPA, and then we can discuss it. Because if we just discuss it how we are now, we're going to be asking the same thing, and we can't really go back and forth and get into the weeds of it.
Like I was saying, we can certainly note, the relationship, community relationships with the police department. We can note these particular topics. We can have I'm kind of thinking like a little parking lot area where it's like we have these priorities for the board that have been discussed, and then you'll all do a final decision this next month, and then you can start placing those topics in certain areas. And if there's an ad hoc that you all desire to create, kind of what I'm hearing here, then you can certainly discuss that, because we'll have that agendized this next month also. So I think there's more to come on that.
Right.
Yeah, the topic of priorities is high level kind of concept of, the priority is not necessarily at this point the details of the specific topics.
We're just, as staff, we're trying to be kind of your organizers of like, okay, we're going to get the information you have. We're going to put it in certain formats. We're certainly capturing all of this. And it's kind of nice that this meeting's recorded too, because Simi and I can kind of go back and make sure that we got everything captured. And if we didn't, then obviously next month would be your opportunity to kind of make sure that's solidified.
Well, what about, I have a priority. We were just told we could do town halls. So can we make that a priority to schedule a town hall?
It seems like that would come under community outreach as our priority,
And
right?
I think some of where we're taking ourselves here to carry some of what Scotty was just saying, another step forward. If we're going to create ad hocs, that has to come with a focus point and what are our priorities. If you listen to a lot of the things we just talked about, community outreach and relationships is kind of a priority.
Right.
I think the way we went around ad hocs before was taking a policy goal. We can't solve the goals for what they are. They're very broad and they're nuanced. So we tried getting data on them. I think if we look at it as what's a priority, for example, community outreach and relationship development, what would fall under there? That creates priorities. And from there, maybe we need a community presence ad hoc committee, for an example. I think we get an opportunity to think this through differently. That makes sense?
Mhm.
That was a
Mhm.
statement, not a question.
So I was saying, I know that wasn't a question.
I didn't have a question, I had a statement.
Okay, I had something to say. Okay, so as far as the priority for community outreach, it just kind of bogged my mind a little bit because I was thinking about Nico when he said about the Know Your Rights Summit. So I actually have something for that, an idea for that. So is it okay that we make a topic to create a CPRB and police department community service or community day? Therefore, we can cover Know Your Rights. We can have that as a segment somewhere in there throughout the day. The police department can put up a recruitment tent, and then the police department can also provide a live simulation as far as like what we did for the series that we did, a couple of years ago. I can't think of it right now, but then they can do that. And then we also have board members there. We pass out information. Just a thought, you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that, per your bylaws, I mean, there's also, the board members are on ride-alongs and do things like that. So it might be an opportunity. I'm just kind of thinking there might be an opportunity to explore further, if there's an ad hoc created, for some of these to work with the police department on something like that. So I think there's opportunities there, and I'll definitely note that down. Board Member Grant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So is there any other priorities coming forth
No,
at this point?
we're sort of considering that, is there, part of what was just shared, is there, I'm going to use the word scorecard. That's not exactly what you're talking about, but it's similar.
Yeah.
To show that every board member is contributing somewhere or plugging into something in the community piece. And that is kind of like another piece of the same conversation, I think.
Yeah.
I think you're onto something. I just don't know what that would look
Yeah,
like.
it's exactly kind of what you put. It's just to kind of show like, because I've heard multiple community members say that we don't do anything. Like they don't think that we do anything. And so I believe that would be like a really good visual thing to put out, like maybe a measurable goal. Like we attended 80% of ride-alongs that are produced throughout the year, or like we attended 5 NAACP events this year, or we went to El Concilio, we went to LGBTQ, like just something that it shows that we're actually going out here to the community and talking to people and understanding who they are and trying to bring some of their problems and issues up here. And I just feel like if we posted that out, put that out, whether it's, Instagram or whatever, I think it just proves to the community that we're actually doing the work and we're actually communicating with the police department. We're actually communicating with the community, and we're actually communicating with the city. So then they could visually see that rather than us just telling that this is what we're doing. We put out a report.
Are you talking into the mic? Oh, did you press your button?
I agree with what you stated, Austin. I think all of that can be captured in the annual report where, what did we do? A lot of that can be captured there. And, when we do create an ad hoc, we can possibly do that quarterly ad hoc committee, like you said. But noting all of that, someone on our board capturing all of everything that we're doing and then putting it into the annual report. That can be another way to make sure the community knows what we're doing.
Did we give you guys enough to write down tonight?
Yeah, I think we got a lot to work with. So just observing, I kind of really saw two pretty clear themes coming out. One was, sorry, I'm kind of in a facilitator role, I guess, but one theme that I saw was, let's get connected with the community.
Yes.
And let them know what we do, right? And that we're available, and to provide that connection between like the board, I'm sorry, the board and the community. And then the other is the community and the police department. And so those are kind of like the two lanes that I kind of saw forming there. But I think that there's other priorities that we're going to go re-listen to this meeting, but that we can pull out, and then we can put this together and we can bring it back this next month. I don't know how impressed you'll be, but I think that we got enough material here to work with. And then we can solidify it this next month.
Indeed. Now, you did mention Stephen is on.
Stephen,
Stephen?
he's on.
Yes.
Stephen, do you have
Anything to
sorry,
weigh
do you
in
mind?
on?
I'll defer to the chair. Yeah, sorry. I'm done being facilitator.
No, first of all, good evening. I'm very happy to be with you
Stephen,
remotely.
we're not able to hear you. And Simi can't unmute your microphone.
Yeah, I'm showing unmuted. Are we good?
Well, he might want to weigh in on this topic. I'm not sure, but I know he's up next.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
I cannot hear you.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry that my mic's showing it's working.
ASL.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, no.
Is it?
Yeah,
You can hear
it's showing what he's saying, but we can't hear him.
Is it on? Hold on just a second, Stephen. You trying now, Stephen?
Yes. How are we doing?
There we go.
All right.
Simi actually unmuted you here, so.
Well, thank you, Timmy. I think she was just
Oh, we're under
messing-
the bus, right?
she was messing with me per usual. So very happy to be with you. I have enjoyed the discussion. I think you are on the right track. Certainly, and structurally or mechanically, I don't really have anything to add to what Scotty has said by way of facilitation and just trying to organize your core themes and goals first, really, and then deciding what specific action it makes sense to take in order to actualize those goals. It sounds like you're already moving in that direction, so that I think your basic approach makes perfect sense. So I want to thank Scotty for throwing me in front of the bus on this one and just kind of cold calling me, but I am happy to be here and I'm looking forward to my report on the next agenda item.
Awesome.
I have a question for Stephen. Madam Chair.
Under priorities?
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Stephen, the priority that we mentioned about engaging with the public, having a visible presence, attending community events. Is OIR able to attend any of those events with us?
I certainly would be happy to do that. It would require a little bit of pre-planning, but I remember, I will tell you, my experience last year in February was very positive when I had the chance to be up in town for a couple of days, and there were two events at the same location. One of them, the second one being your monthly board meeting, and I thought that was terrific, just in terms of the level of public engagement. And the night before, I was happy to participate in a panel with board member Grant and the chief, and I think our representative from the sheriff's department. So, yeah, we are certainly happy to let people know in as direct a way as we possibly can what our role is and how we are hopefully contributing to oversight and effective law enforcement in your community.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? All right. No further comments, no action needed. All right. Now we're going on to Stephen.
All right, so I am back. Thank you, Chair Beasley Day, and I certainly want to start by congratulating you on your lofty new responsibilities. I'm sure you're going to be firm but fair in handling that. And thank you very much, Board Member Solorio, for all of your work. I know you really took the role seriously as Chair Hahn had done the year before. And I appreciated the interactions and just kind of what you were bringing to the party there. So thank you very much for your service and looking forward to continuing to work with you. With regard to my presentation tonight, the only update that I want to give is just to let you know that in terms of the OIR calendar, the Independent Police Auditor calendar, we are kind of in crunch time for our work in Modesto now that 2025 has closed out. I have begun my interactions with Lieutenant Kleiber in terms of rounding up the subject matter for this year's audit, which is obviously kind of the main public-facing function of my office. So just to refresh everybody's recollection, there are a few categories of things that are established in the scope of work that are going to form the basis for this year's audit and this year's report. One of those things is critical incidents and deadly force events like officer-involved shootings. As you will remember, the department had 2 officer-involved shooting incidents in 2025. Neither of those is complete, however, with regard to the various investigative processes that ensue after one of those. So those will not be featured in the report in terms of any assessment of the department's administrative review of it, and presumably that'll be something that'll come up for the 2026 calendar year, and obviously that'll be a ways away as far as public reporting. But as far as the other 2 main content areas, it's internal affairs cases and uses of force. There is a formula for the cases that get looked at, and it is a combination of certain automatic selections. And in the internal affairs arena, that's going to be any case involving an allegation of bias, and any case in which a supervisor is named as the subject, because there are some special sensitivities involved with that. And then as far as all the remaining complaints and investigations, we look at a third of those. My understanding from Lieutenant Kleiber is that numbers are up a little bit from last year over year, just in terms of the number of complaints. I probably will spend a little time exploring, what are some potential reasons for that increase and theorize about it a little bit. But it's not that unusual for variations from year to year to occur in some of the different jurisdictions that we work with, but it just sort of means a bigger pool of things for me to look at the outset. And then the other category is uses of force, and I will be looking at a quarter of those. And again, it's going to be effectively a random sampling. I'm not going to have any details about the cases. I am going to want to know some of the different force options that were used, so that I can really get a sampling of a lot of different types of force incidents and the way the department responded. But as far as the content of the cases or anything else, it's really just kind of a blind sampling of a quarter of those cases. So I should be getting the materials from the department within another week or 2, and then we'll start in on my process and remain on track to report out to you folks in April per the calendar that you were just taking a look at. So I'm looking forward to getting started with the process again, and being back in Modesto in person at some point in the near future.
Awesome. Any questions?
Yes. Okay. Stephen, are you able to select anything you want to review, or is it all given to you?
So I do the random selection is done by me, but as far as asking for a particular case or a particular kind of case, that's not the protocol.
Okay. I guess just what's on my mind is, and only if you're able to answer, you don't have to. Will you or your department be reviewing the June incidences with the protest?
So it's a great question. I know what a prominent part of the city's focus and the board's focus was in the past year. My understanding from Lieutenant Kleiber is that there were 2 cases that emerged from that, and because of the nature of the allegations, they are going to fall under the umbrella of things that I will be receiving. So I will be looking at least a couple even specific complaints that emerged from that, and we'll be reporting out on them.
Thank you, Stephen.
Wonderful. Anyone else on the board? A question for Stephen? Well, thank you so very much, Stephen.
All right, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going on to be staff comments and reports.
I've talked
Scotty,
enough.
You're on again?
I've talked enough. I'm pretty good.
You good?
Yeah.
All right.
I have one thing to say. Currently working with Sylvan Union School District, I created a plan for at-risk youth to help their situation over there with their reading, literacy, and just trying to get those kids on the right track and prepared for high school. One of the things I came here to ask for is that just more MPD involvement. One of the parts of the plan, just because I come here a lot, is to have some type of involvement with MPD. That could just be with their wake up program, some of their student activities that they currently have, and just partner with Sylvan Union School District. And I know you guys do a lot of work with MCS, and I understand the location of Sylvan Union School District is pretty much on a good part of town. But however, there are still some at-risk youth over there that are still struggling with reading comprehension and just gang lifestyle. And so just hoping that MPD just slight ask if they can kind of help in that effort. We just kind of started talks, and we're going to start a pilot at looking like Prescott Middle School and Savage Middle School. So.
All right. I don't know what that fell under, but that was good information.
That was 60. Coming up, little.
60.
6A now.
Okay. All right. Board comments and reports. Policy goal number 8. Review use of force policy to minimize likelihood of death resulting from use of force. That would be the committee.
I have a report.
You do? All right. Awesome.
We understood that we should be wrapping up what our committee was doing. So the last thing we wanted to discuss was we alluded to this when we reported back in October about recommendations that we would be making to the board. And at that point, we reported that we had met with Chief Gillespie and Lieutenant Kleiber about our suggestions. And there are, what we are asking or recommending to the board based on our work or our discussions is that the board set an agenda item discussing the recommendations that I'm about to outline to you. We would like to see the board consider these recommendations, and if in agreement, include them as part of the recommendations in, it would be next year's, the annual report for 2026. The 4 recommendations that I have basically recommend a change in MPD sections, a change in language from should to shall. And what we're recommending that in those changes in MPPD policy manual section 300.4 about deadly force applications. This section provides, among other things, that an officer should not use deadly force against a person whose actions are a threat solely to property. So our recommendation and what we'd like the board to put on an agenda to discuss with all of us would be a change in the language from should to shall. Section 300.6 medical considerations provides that once it is reasonably safe to do so, properly trained officers should, quote, should promptly provide or procure medical assistance for any person injured or claiming to have been injured in a use of force incident. And again, we recommend a change in the language to shall. Section 300.7 supervisory responsibilities sets out the responsibilities of supervisors to respond to any reported use of force. Section 300.7F provides that supervisors are expected to, quote, conduct a use of force investigation for all uses of force incidents and review and approve all related reports. The investigation should include a review and documentation of de-escalation tactics or attempts pursuant to this policy. And again, we're recommending that the board consider looking at that language and a change in it. And lastly, section 402.6 administration calls for internal affairs to prepare an annual report on the efforts of the department to provide fair and objective policing and submit that annual report to the chief. This report, quote, should be reviewed by the chief to identify any changes in training or operations that should be made to improve service. And it further provides that supervisors should review the annual report and discuss the results with those whom they are assigned to supervise. And again, both of those shoulds, we believe, should be changed to shall. We discussed this, as I said, in October, and we met with the chief and Lieutenant Kleiber, and we welcomed, we had a pretty robust exchange of views, and the department chief articulated the reasons that they didn't think that he, as chief of the department, didn't think the language needed to be changed. And I don't want to attempt to articulate that. I don't want to misrepresent anything that the chief or Brian discussed. So what we would like to see is, hopefully it'll fit into one of our priorities, but consideration of review of policies relating to use of force was our priority for a couple of years now. And we think that the whole board should take these up for discussion and invite or specifically request input from the chief and Brian as well. So that is our final wrap up here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Policy goal number 1, improve relations between the community and the department.
And she looks at me. I think I will, unless either of you want to add something different. Our goal set us on a mission initially to learn about programs in our community. We saw a lot of crossover with the work that Wendy was working on. And the goal in and of itself to improve relations between the community and the department is not a solvable statement in and of itself. The work that we're doing collectively is moving in that direction. So I'll say there's not a specific thing we concluded or are actively working on. It was sharing and intaking of information. So I think at this point, it's best to wrap it, as I don't really feel it was an ad hoc task type of thing, but I look forward to seeing what we do next.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Policy goal number 3, reduce youth arrests, particularly among Latino youth. Know how I got on that committee.
In summary, what we did over the year was we did conduct some interviews, not us personally, but with some of the staff. We gave them some interview questions for youth that were in juvenile hall. We also invited a judge to speak, to give his perception, a judge that works with youth all of the time, to give his perception of what he felt some of the problems and solutions were. And we want to close out with data. Again, Lieutenant Clyburn was nice enough to get some data for us. And I had requested that that data be shared with the rest of the board. Did it go out? Did everybody get it? Okay. So that's a conclusion then to our committee's goal.
Wonderful.
If I may, real quickly, just add, I also last year attended a few of the Wake Up Program meetings. So through that, I actually want to continue on that conversation into this year. So once we create new ad hocs, we'll probably be getting more specific with what it is it will entail. But
There, anyone else? Okay, so. All right, that's it.
I think
End
the
of
board
those
comments and reports.
Board comments and reports. At this time, board members may make a brief announcement or report briefly on his or her activities. Anybody have anything you want to share?
Yeah, I just quickly want to share for an announcement that in our bylaws, we do have to have specific hours of training. So for anyone that has any upcoming time, I know Modesto Police Department is having a Citizens Academy. Not all of us may attend, but some of us may. It's going to be February 12th. It's on a Thursday, and it'll be for 6 weeks from 5:30 to 7:30. I did ask if we can attend. So if you guys are interested, I would reach out to Scotty and Chief Gillespie or Kleiber. Okay, reach out to Kleiber so he can help set that up. But again, it's February 12th for 2 hours on a Thursday, every Thursday for 6 weeks. It's a Citizens Academy.
What was the time again?
5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Like we're rebranding that as the Community Academy.
Oh, Community Academy. Okay, awesome. Yeah.
Communities.
And that's all I had to announce.
Anyone else? And thank you for that, Nico.
Of course.
No one else has any announcements? All right. Then we'll move on to item number 7, future agenda items.
I think we'll be
To be
talking about those
determined.
in the future.
Yes, to be determined. We gave Scotty enough to work with. All right, with that being said, we are going to adjourn this meeting. Our next meeting.